Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, it has been quite a day in Brussels. Mrs May and David Davis there to meet Jean-Claude Juncker for lunch, and late this morning it appeared that a deal had been done. A Belgian Green MEP, Philip Lamberts, told us that a deal was on the table that would mean that Northern Ireland would have to maintain regulatory equivalence with Southern Ireland. Effectively, Northern Ireland would stay part of the single market, virtually part of the European Union. And people in Brussels seem to be really rather pleased, because once again, every demand they'd put to the British was being met by the British government. And then Arlene Foster, leader of the DUP, said no. And she said no in absolutely clear terms that this is part of the United Kingdom. We cannot treat it differently. I guess the great mystery with all of this is surely the Prime Minister must have known that if she agreed to Northern Ireland having a completely separate status from the rest of the UK, that the DUP wouldn't put up with it. At least that's what I would have thought. So to me it's a bit of a mystery. The day started off oddly for me. I was listening this morning as David Davis was about to head off, and on the tarmac, this is what David Davis said this morning.
I think it is an important day. I mean, the Council can always make up its own mind on the 15th, but it's an important day. They'll take a lot of guidance from the Commission, and everybody understands that the decision to move on to trade talks is vital. It's vital to everybody. It's huge value to the 27 members and to ourselves.
I thought, hang on, David. Why are you talking about the interests of the 27 members before you're talking about our interests? Has something happened to the British negotiating team with all these visits to Brussels? So I wasn't happy, to begin with, hearing that. Then when I heard that this massive concession was going to be made, that we would have to maintain all the same laws, I thought, wow, this is extraordinary. Now, talking us through the twists and turns of this, and indeed what's going to happen with some quite big votes in Westminster tonight, is Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor. Joining me from Westminster. Theo, good evening.
A very good evening to you, Nigel. Brexit tonight doesn't quite look like the sort of Brexit I think you and others supported on June the 23rd
I think
last year.
that's certainly true.
To put it mildly.
Yes.
To put it mildly, that divorce bill is north of £40 billion. Of course, EU citizens' rights. It actually looks like they're going to get more rights than most Britons here in the UK. And then today, the announcement that wasn't an announcement on that Northern Irish border, and that border with the Republic of Ireland. It stretches to nearly 300 miles. But this seems to be the issue that today prevented Theresa May from signing a deal in all but name with Jean-Claude Juncker, the President of the European Commission. She went over to Brussels with David Davis. They sat down for lunch with Mr Juncker to finally seal that deal, and it looked as if there was going to be what they call a regulatory divergence between. There was going to be no regulatory divergence between Northern Ireland
and Theo, what amuses me about this is already you have a different level of corporation tax and income tax on both sides of the borders. One side of the border has sterling, the other side of the border has the euro. I mean, to me, some of these arguments are nonsense, but the fact is, she was going to sign that deal, wasn't she?
She was going to sign that deal, but then Arlene Foster came out and gave this extraordinary statement in which she said that the DUP wouldn't support it. That brought an end, of course, to the deal mid-lunch with Mr Juncker, because, of course, if Arlene Foster and the DUP aren't supporting it, they're going to, in effect, withdraw their support from the government, and therefore Theresa May would, well, I mean, the government would fall, Nigel. Anyway, Theresa May afterwards tried to put a very, very brave face on it.
She's good at
clear,
that, isn't she?
crucially, that we want to move forward together. But on a couple of issues, some differences do remain, which require further negotiation, but we will reconvene before the end of the week, and I am also confident that we will conclude this positively.
Yeah.
She's positive. She's positive. Then it's going to be concluded Saturday. And I understand that she's going to go back on Wednesday. Is that right?
Yes, she's going to go back on Wednesday and try and sort this out. But now, really, the ball has been taken away from Jean-Claude Juncker, the President of the European Commission. This is all about what Theresa May can negotiate with the DUP and Arlene Foster. And we know that Arlene Foster is a really hard negotiator. We saw that where she extracted £1 billion for infrastructure in Northern Ireland after the general election. Jean-Claude Juncker, for once, well, in effect, he was rendered obsolete.
Despite our best efforts and the significant progress we and our teams have made over the past days on the three main withdrawal issues, it was not possible to reach a complete agreement today.
And then, of course, this was the statement from Arlene Foster that scuppered the deal.
A Brexit where the common travel areas continued, where we meet our financial obligations, where we have a strict time-limited implementation period, and where the contribution of EU migrants to our economy is recognised in a practical manner.
Quite extraordinary. Theo, one question I have to ask you. How can it be that a government that is effectively propped up by the DUP didn't know? Theo, I've lost Theo. Well, anyway, the question remains, how could they not have known that the DUP were going to do this? Now, I have to say, I have been, over the course of the last week, absolutely furious that we're prepared to pay up to £50 billion as an exit bill. I can't believe that EU citizens living in the UK will have more rights than UK citizens living in the UK and recourse to two courts. And now she was about to sign something that in effect would have begun to break up our country. I tweeted pretty much immediately after we were told what this deal was. What does that mean for Scotland? What does it mean for other parts of the United Kingdom? Didn't take long, did it? Nicola Sturgeon said, if one part of the UK can retain regulatory alignment with the European Union and stay in the single market, there is surely no good practical reason why others can't. And even Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, said, huge ramifications for London if Theresa May has conceded that it's possible for part of the UK to remain within the single market and customs union after Brexit. Londoners voted to remain in the EU. A similar deal here could protect, in his view, tens of thousands of jobs. So we could be looking at a hard border on the M25, perhaps, Sadiq. I mean, literally, what she was going to agree to would have led us to the greatest constitutional crisis we've ever seen in this country. What is it with this Prime Minister? I mean, why have we spent months negotiating when ultimately she agrees with every single thing they ask us for? Why bother? Why not just fly the white flag from Downing Street and appoint Juncker in charge of the country? It is pathetic, and at the moment, you are not hearing much political kickback against it. We had it today from the DUP, but I'm absolutely certain that there are many millions of Brexit voters who see this, frankly, as the great Brexit betrayal. It will not be long before her backbenchers start mumbling. I've said consistently, I didn't think she'd last long as Prime Minister. I think that prediction could come true sooner than many people think. So, the DUP, Arlene Foster, was she right to scupper the deal that would have seen Northern Ireland remain in the customs union and the single market? And if you think, yes, absolutely, it's part of the UK, it should never have been considered to be treated differently, call me on 0345 6060 973, or maybe you think this was a compromise that was necessary and would have benefited the rest of the United Kingdom, in which case you can text to 84850, or maybe like me, you think it would have led to a constitutional disaster with Scotland, Wales, London, Gibraltar, and goodness knows where else, and in that case you can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC, and LBC, you can watch me on Facebook and comment there too. And my first caller this evening is from County Down, Northern Ireland. It's Cecil, who's a new caller. Good evening, Cecil.
Good evening, Nigel.
Were the DUP right today, Cecil?
They were absolutely right, and I think the rest of our fellow British citizens should thank the DUP for what they did today, for doing two things. They put on hold, and hopefully they might even scupper the ridiculous divorce bill payment. And secondly, they have thwarted the opportunistic sound bites of Nicola Sturgeon and Wales and Sadiq Khan, who were going to look for similar special status It was ridiculous. They were trying to drive a wedge in various regions in the United Kingdom, and as you say, it would have led to the beginning of the breakup of the United Kingdom.
Yes. Oh, Cecil, look, I think what she's done today is heroic. I really, really do. Funny, isn't it? The DUP today are the most important political party in the whole of Europe. You heard Theo Usherwood earlier saying how irrelevant Juncker looked. No, I mean, I do think that. But, Cecil, what can you get into the mind of the Prime Minister? What did she think she was doing?
Well, it seems to me if you get into the mind of Theresa May, you're not going to really find an awful lot.
Right.
It was ridiculous that she didn't consult with the party who are supporting her in government, because these people are unionists. The majority of people in Northern Ireland are unionists, and what was being proposed was a break between the Union of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And that's why Varadkar and his mates were so happy that this was going to go through.
Yes, you're talking about the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister,
yes,
of ERA. I mean, do you think much of this has been used now by Sinn Féin and the Nationalists as a means, effectively, of pushing a united Ireland a lot closer?
Well, Sinn Féin have still got on the agenda a united Ireland. All that has happened is the methodology of obtaining that has changed, and they are still pursuing it. And to me, it is now the time for Mrs May and her negotiators to walk away and agree to world trade terms, or alternatively, agree to this no divergence.
She won't do it, Cecil. She won't do it.
But make it for the whole of the United Kingdom, not just Northern Ireland.
No, absolutely. Cecil, I thank you for the clarity of that call. Yes, Nigel, I'd like to know why GB politicians are more concerned with EU rights than our rights, says Anne on Twitter. Anne, I absolutely get that. Nigel, before you start your sermon on the microphone, please tell the whole country what your solution to the Irish border is, says Dr. Ralph. Dr. Ralph, I will tell you. Quite simple. What the UK government should have done is to say we are unconditionally offering a free trade deal to continue with Ireland, and we're going to the WTO, who will back us up and support that, because that's their job, is to promote ease of trade, and we'll go to Brussels and say, because of political sensitivity, and after all, it's you in Brussels who keep saying you don't want the Good Friday Agreement compromised, we ask you in Brussels to make an exception for Ireland, whatever you decide to do with the United Kingdom for the rest of the EU. Put the onus back on them to do the right thing. But hey, you know what? That would take leadership. We haven't got any of that. There is no deal in Brussels as of tonight, and Mrs May will go back there on Wednesday to meet Jean-Claude Juncker. Remember, the timeline for all of this is there will be, on the 14th of December, the leaders of all 28 countries will be there in a room, by which time we hope to have moved on to trade. We have to make sufficient progress. Miss May has to show Headmaster Juncker that she's been doing her homework, and she'll now be allowed to sit her A-levels next summer. That's kind of how I see this relationship. But then I haven't got much time for the Prime Minister. So there is no deal tonight, but boy, there nearly was. She was about to sign up to a deal that would have fundamentally changed the status of Northern Ireland within the United Kingdom, kept it in the single market, in the customs union, effectively kept it inside the European Union. But it was the DUP that did something about it. Arlene Foster, their leader, saying no. And Jess says to me on Twitter, another Thatcher. Foster is the new Iron Woman. Wow, there we are. Well, let's get some opinion from the DUP. I'm going to go now to Ian Paisley, the DUP MP for North Antrim. Ian, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. It's wonderful to talk to you. You're really great, my old friend. How are you?
Well, I'm well, but I'm completely and utterly confused. You guys are in a really powerful position. This government can't survive without your support after the somewhat botched from the Tory perspective election earlier this year. So they need your support to stay in government. And the bit, Ian, I don't get is how could the Prime Minister have been about to sign something that would have changed Northern Ireland's status without even talking to you guys?
Well, I think we need to do, I think it is important that we do put some flesh on the bones, because there is an awful lot of spin and dirt and dirty tactics going on. And I think that it's important to clear the air on some of that. To be fair, I know you have your differences with the Prime Minister, but to be fair,
just a bit.
Prime Minister, the Prime Minister did hold the line today, and I've no doubt that there were officials, that there were people from Dublin overplaying their hand and trying to exert muscle and control, and they failed. And they failed for a number of reasons. They failed, first of all, because we are holding a very, very strong hand, and we are holding a very strong line. But we also, as you will know, Nigel, Ulster men and Ulster women demonstrated their mettle today. We do not believe in knee-jerk reactions, in quick negotiations, and we're not pushover unionists. We believe in taking our time and getting it right, because one thing's going to be clear. When we leave the European Union on that glorious day, every single constituent part of the United Kingdom is leaving on the same terms and the same conditions. There's not going to be a difference between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK, because that would weaken the entirety of the Union. Scotland would clamour for the same arrangement. Wales, parts of London.
Of course.
A complete mess. It would be a spaghetti.
It would be a disaster. But I mean, you know, you mentioned the Prime Minister, and perhaps you've got some more time for her than I have. But I mean, did you think, Ian, when you were campaigning and you and I shared platforms in that referendum, did you think that as a result of us voting to leave, we'd finish up paying a leaving bill of nearly £50 billion?
Well, we haven't got all of the detail of that yet. I'm prepared to wait until the end of the negotiations before I cast judgment. Now you're doing a brilliant job, Nigel, in terms of exposing and keeping pressure on them at that end. You'll know that my job politically is to make sure that, let's see where this negotiation goes. Let's put down our red lines privately as well. Let's work on issues and put on our influence and try and assert that influence behind the scenes. And then when the final deal comes, let's look at it. Now, I agree with you, and I agree with the other position. People do not want to pay any more than is due to the EU. But if there is something that we need to pay that is fair and reasonable and accounts for what we do actually owe, then I'm up for a discussion on that. I'm up for a fair deal, because in any divorce arrangement, there's always going to be some things which you don't like. But at the end of the day, we are leaving, and we're going to leave on the best terms to the United Kingdom.
Well,
I've got a very good view on this. If we don't get a good deal, Nigel, we leave and we go for WTO. That's my position. That's a position I've had for a long time, and that's where we need to be. But if that's where we need to be if this does not work out. But I'm prepared to go with these negotiations and try and get us the best deal. And remember, we've been in negotiations before. I often joke, I negotiated with the IRA and got them to support the police. That was a pretty good result. Now, I think we can negotiate with these European people and get a good result for the United Kingdom also.
Does there come a point, Ian Paisley, where the DUP can no longer continue to support this government?
You're kicking the ball too far down the line. That's unfair for me to answer that at this point. I think we have made it very clear that we support this government on a number of reasons. One, we want to have stability for the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. We want to make sure that there's a political certainty for people going forward with Brexit. And we believe that, therefore, we will support the government in those terms. If the government backtracks on our agreement, on the principles that we believe we have established with them, that'll be a matter for them, and there's consequences. And I don't need to spell out those consequences. In fact, you know something, Nigel? It's better that it's never actually said.
Okay, and Ian, finally, a great day for the DUP, in your opinion?
It's always a great day for the DUP, because we are the party of the people. But now, I just say this before it is, finally, I want to publicly thank you for your revolutionary leadership of this nation over Brexit. We shared platforms. You were the unpopular guy. You had to take the brickbats, and we got there. We had a great victory, and we're going to get this over the line. And I want to thank you for the.
Well, that's kind of you, Ian. But that's kind of you. But I'm going to keep all the pressure up I can, because I want I want the Brexit we voted for. Ian Paisley, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Thank you. Ian was being nice to me, but Peter on Twitter says, Farage clutching at straws as he reports the Brexit news and the shambles that is laid bare. It's all now someone else's fault, apparently. All right, Peter, it's all my fault. I know most things are my fault. Ian Paisley, though, I thought being really rather diplomatic. Still very much being supportive of the Prime Minister. He says there were big attempts by Dublin, by people in the civil service to try and push the Prime Minister into signing this, and he was being quite generous there to Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor, taking a completely different view and saying, you know, the pen was out. She was about to sign until Eileen Foster said no. So, you know, you pays your money, you takes your choice. All I can say is that she's given in on the idea that EU citizens living in the UK can go not just to our courts, but to European courts as well. She's collapsed over the amount of money that apparently she's prepared to pay, and I'm very, very worried. Under her, we are not going to get the kind of Brexit we voted for, which is why I wonder whether she can survive. Stephen is calling me from Belfast. Good evening, Stephen.
Hey, Nigel, how are you?
I'm well. So, how does it look from your side tonight?
What a shambles. What an absolute shambles.
I
mean, like, I'll lay my cards on the table. I voted Remain because I thought it was the right thing to do. But that's a debate for another day. We've had the referendum. We're leaving the EU. But I don't see how the Prime Minister can survive much longer. To not consult what is effectively the junior partner in government on such an important issue, and I'm no fan of the DUP by any stretch.
Sure.
But their position has never been unclear on the EU. They've always wanted to leave the EU, I think, from their inception back in the 70s. And for Theresa May I think what she was trying to do was embarrass them into agreeing with her by signing a deal and then telling them about it afterwards, and then they would be embarrassed into agreeing with her. She obviously does not know how the DUP operate, because that's not
Interesting.
Understand them at all.
Interesting. Now, that's a very, very interesting analysis. And I think you're right, Stephen. I think, she wanted to sign it, say to them, look, sorry, chaps, it's a done deal. But, of course, if you rebel or withdraw your support from the government, there'll be a general election, and that ultra Irish nationalist, Mr. Corbyn, could become Prime Minister. She thought she'd call their bluff, Stephen, didn't she?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it shows a real lack of awareness on the British government's behalf of how the DUP operate. I mean, all you have to do is look at their negotiating hand with Sinn Féin and previous governments in Northern Ireland to see that these guys, they stick, like, as I say, I'm not a fan of them, but I have a bit of grudging respect for them in the sense that they stood their ground and they made the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and of Great Britain and Northern Ireland change her position in high-level talks with the senior officials in the EU, and they only have 10 MPs, and there's no functioning devolved government here. Theresa May has scuppered herself with the recent election, and now the DUP hold all the cards, and that's her own fault.
So you think, Stephen, from your knowledge of Northern Irish politics, that what happened today was entirely predictable because that's how the DUP do business?
Absolutely. I mean, the DUP have never been unclear about their position about leaving the EU, and that they are staunch supporters of the Union, and no one can doubt that. And to have Northern Ireland treated differently than the rest of the UK in this sense goes completely against their entire ethos.
Yeah.
And I think it was a real, I think it was a real blunder.
Yeah. No, terrific, Stephen. Thank you. Very interesting analysis there from Northern Ireland. Stephen, who's not a supporter, but knows the DUP. And admires them at least for their principles. They stick to their guns, something Mrs May clearly underestimated. Lorraine says, well done, DUP. I'm sure there are many others. Alan says, well done, Eileen Foster. May should resign now. She's tried to sell our country short again. Well, I've no doubt in a moment there'll be lots of you telling me that Eileen Foster was wrong. The DUP scupper a deal that would have seen Northern Ireland remain in the customs union and the single market. Were they right to do so? Well, I just simply can't believe that the Prime Minister was on the verge of signing up to this. I can't believe the extent to which she's prepared to give in to every demand that is made by Juncker and Barnier and Tusk and all the others. Interesting point here David makes by text. He says, Nigel, in retrospect, thank God Theresa May didn't get a majority. Well, David, do you know what? I thought that at the time. She says Brexit means Brexit, give me a majority, and the bigger majority she'd got, the softer and softer and softer the Brexit would have been. I'm absolutely convinced of that. She is, of course, a Remainer. She couldn't answer Dale's question the other week when he said to her, how would you vote if there's a referendum tomorrow? And I remember in the election itself, Paxman 4 times saying to her, well, you supported Remain. Do you now believe in Brexit? And answer, there came none. You can't do this job properly unless you believe in it. Eileen Foster for UKPM, out with a traitor May, says, Sharon, I wonder what Benjamin thinks, who's calling from Glasgow. Benjamin, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Farage. How are you doing?
Very well. Was she right to do this or not, Benjamin?
Who, Eileen Foster and
Yeah,
the
Foster.
whole thing, or
Well, Foster.
or,
I mean, effectively, the talk was doing the rounds that this deal was about to be signed, and Foster came out and said no. Was that the right thing to do?
from her point of view, yeah, it was, but like from a neutral point of view, like I don't see how she's got the right to do that. I mean, right now she's not even the First Minister of Northern Ireland. I mean, Theresa May has been like negotiating for a year and a half, and from our point of view in Scotland, like Nicola Sturgeon, like produced this paper called Scotland in Europe, and it would have kept Scotland in the single market, as it rightly should have, because it voted Remain. And we got told, oh no, you can't have a differential agreement, like it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And now Theresa May's just signed this agreement. So practically, Theresa May is in the worst situation like ever possible. Like practically everything's closed in on her. Like it's absolutely brilliant.
I think you're right. You're obviously not a fan of Mrs. May, Benjamin.
Not our biggest supporter. I think that'd be the right thing to do.
No. But you're quite right. Scotland were told there can be no differential. The UK voted to leave as a United Kingdom. We will march in step with each other. And here she was on the verge of about to do something very different with Northern Ireland. It kind of beggars belief, doesn't it?
It is just absolutely fantastic, really. Like, from the neutral perspective, it is brilliant.
Right.
You know what I mean?
What happens next, Benjamin, in your view?
Who's to know? It is up there, isn't it? No one knows what's going to happen.
I reckon do you know what? I reckon, Benjamin, if you and I try to predict what's going to happen on Wednesday night in Brussels with this next big meeting with Juncker, we got more chance picking the winner of next year's Grand National, in my opinion. Benjamin, I thank you very much for your call, and Benjamin pointing out just the huge inconsistencies that we've seen from May on this when it comes to the treatment of Scotland and the treatment of Northern Ireland. More calls from Belfast. Mark is calling from Belfast. Good evening, Mark.
Yes, Nigel, good evening to you.
So, did she do the right thing? Is she a hero figure tonight?
The whole thing was a setup, Nigel, as far as I'm concerned.
Go on.
Yeah, I think the whole thing was staged. I live in a DUP constituency, and there's actually no way that the DUP would agree to this.
Sure.
On the Sky News, the banner came up and said that the government understood that the DUP was on the side. That's just complete nonsense. I would actually surmise that Arlene had probably Theresa May on speed dial waiting for the call. You know what I mean? It's absolutely crazy.
So what was May doing then, Mark?
It's basically a setup. She knew that the DUP would never agree to this, so she went forward to negotiate in inverted commas to try and get the deal. I suddenly got the call from the DUP to say, I'm sorry, but there's no deal. Sorry, my hands are tied. And that was it.
Right, but do you think, Mark, her intention, if she thought the DUP could be pacified, her intention would have been to sign?
No, I do not. I think it's just part of...
all a big game, yeah?
Yeah, it's part of the game. I think we're actually heading towards a no-deal situation. I really do.
But Mrs May wants a deal. That's why she's prepared to pay $50 billion for it. That's why she's given in on the rights of EU citizens living in the United Kingdom. Mrs May wants a deal more than anything, doesn't she?
I think we may be giving Mrs May less credit than she's due. I think basically this is all part of the run down the clock towards maybe January the 1st of next year.
Yep.
And I believe that will be the cut-off point to turn around and say, no, I've tried my best. We simply can't get a deal. It's no deal.
Oh, Mark, I hope you're right. I really hope you're right. I hope Mrs May is this deep Machiavellian figure, who appeared to be generous at every stage of these negotiations, but really had the ulterior motive of getting us out for a clean Brexit, and it's going to be our New Year's, sort of Happy New Year gift. Mark, I hope you're right. I doubt you are, but I do hope you're right. Denise thinks, without a doubt, May's got to go. Bring on the Mog now. We keep hearing this about the Mog. The Mog is a backbencher. There would need to be a leadership contest. He would need to make the last two in the Conservative Party before a vote went out to the country and the members. If he did make the last two, then actually, Denise, I think he'd win. But I think we're some way from that happening just yet. Bernie very cynically says on Facebook, if we offer to pay another $10 billion, I'm sure the Irish border problem will vanish into thin air. Well, we may be right, Bernie, I don't know. Teresa is calling, a new caller from Banstead in Surrey. Good evening, Teresa.
Good evening. Nice to speak to you.
Well, no, thank you for calling. And was Arlene Foster right to, in the strident terms she did, strike this deal down?
Yes, thank God she did. When I heard it, I was driving and I feel my blood pressure rising because I just cannot believe it. Just seems to be one awful thing after another with the whole negotiations. I mean, Theresa May might as well be on the other side of the table the way things are going on. She just gives them whatever they want.
Yes, oh yes.
Whatever they ask for.
Yes,
and,
yes.
You know, and I just think it would have been an absolutely disaster. You know, and I just want the backbenchers, the Brexiteers, to stand up and let her know what's for. And for her to remember what happened to Nick Clegg when he renegaded on his deal, and how I will never in my life vote Conservative again if she mucks this up.
Well, she is. I think she is mucking it up, Theresa, and clearly I can tell that you're a clean Brexiteer. And I'm not going to use hard and soft Brexit. They're the words of the other side to try and confuse things.
Just Brexit.
But Theresa, are you prepared to take the risk that if there is a leadership contest within the Conservative Party in chaos, that it could lead to a breakdown in relationships and a general election and Mr Corbyn? Would it be better just to stick with Theresa May and hope for the best rather than take that risk?
It's a hard one. I think I would be too worried that it would slip back. I would have to stick. Better the devil you know than the one you don't. So I would have to stick with her.
See, it's funny, isn't it, you see, because you're on the phone telling me you can't stand what May's done, she's surrendering everything, it's time the backbenchers stood up, and when I put it to you, should we get rid of her, you worry about the risk. And that actually is why she's still Prime Minister, because almost everyone I talk to in the Conservative Party says exactly that. Look, she's bloody hopeless, but, you know, we haven't got much choice, because if we go for a new leader, there might be a complete breakdown in parliamentary support, and there could be a general election. I don't know. Anyway, Theresa, I thank you for your call, and I promise you folks, Theresa is one of millions. They voted Brexit because they believe in it, and they simply, under this Prime Minister and the current direction, are not going to get it. Kevin says they will do a backdoor job on Wednesday, Nigel, and sell Ireland down the river. Well, I tell you what, Kevin, if they try to sell Northern Ireland down the river, I think she's met an implacable opponent in Arlene Foster. I think they've got a real problem now. Look, a lot of this talk about the Irish border is nonsense. Already we have differentials of currency, differentials of tax. You know, this is not difficult to sort this out. I think, frankly, the people who want this to be a problem have been the European Commission themselves from day one. Patricia is hopeful and says, could it be a wind-up so that we can walk away? I really hope that's true, Patricia, but I don't see it. Joseph is calling from Sheffield. Joseph, was she right to do this?
Yeah, she was absolutely right, Nigel. It was the right thing to do. She was a strong woman, and I'm proud of her, and she should be the one negotiating Brexit, in my opinion.
Oh, so the Prime Minister should sort of step aside, should she really?
Yes, she should be drafted into the Brexit negotiating team, and Foster should be taking charge. She did what she was meant to do, and she saved the economic integrity and territorial integrity of the United Kingdom.
Well, I have to say, I don't disagree with a single word of what you've just said in terms of the integrity of the UK. You're absolutely right, Joseph. Joseph, were you a Leave supporter?
Yes, I was, and I tell you what's surprising, what dramatic happened to me, Nigel. Today I was watching everything unfold, and I was really sad, and I went down on my knees and said, God, please let Northern Ireland come with us. Let them not be sold down the river. Yeah. And God said to me, we are going to come out stronger than ever before. And within minutes, I saw Foster coming.
Well, Joseph, yeah? All I can say, man, is keep praying for Brexit, because it worked today. Joseph from Sheffield, you're a star. Arlene Foster, leader of the DUP, scuppers a deal that would have seen Northern Ireland stay part of the single market and the customs union, effectively not really leave the European Union at all. I'm asking you whether she was right, whether she was wrong. One or two theories have been put up that actually the whole thing's a set-up and actually Mrs May is appearing to give in to everything, and then when a deal can't be reached, she'll walk away on the 1st of January, you know, rather like a modern-day Queen Boudica, and be some great heroine figure. In fact, Sally says, good grief, if that caller is right about the set-up, then May should take up poker. Somebody else says, I would love to think it's all a wind-up, but why? we can just walk away without all of that, and that is, of course, entirely true. I'm convinced Mrs May wants a deal more than anything. She wants to get it over with. She wants to move on, and she's prepared to concede virtually anything to get there, including the territorial integrity of parts of the United Kingdom, which is why I'm so vehemently opposed to it, and why I think Foster was right. That's my view. Jim is a new caller from Newry in Northern Ireland. Jim, good evening.
Hiya, Nigel. How are you?
I'm fine. So was she right or wrong to do what she did, Jim?
Well, I think she's wrong.
Okay.
I think that she has missed a trick. I think that by keeping Northern Ireland within the European Union would have attracted a lot of businesses who remained in the other part of the United Kingdom into Northern Ireland. It would have been a boost for our economic situation here. We would have been able to trade both within the UK and within Europe without any barriers, and I think it's a trick that has been missed.
Okay, Jim, I mean, there is that view that the European single market is good for business. There is equally the opposite view that by leaving the single market, we can become more competitive in terms of cost and regulation, and, Jim, the number of countries across the world that we can trade with without barriers.
Nigel, you're talking to me. Don't talk over me. What I'm saying is...
I'm not, Jim. I'm just saying to you. I'm just saying to you.
Yeah,
there is another point of view on this.
Sorry, don't talk over to me. What I am saying to you is that having a UK company internationally based in Northern Ireland would give you the best of both worlds. You would be able to trade globally, and you would be able to trade within the EU. And that, to me, would be a big advantage to many companies within the UK.
But, Jim, if Northern Ireland was to stay part of the single market and the customs union, and the United Kingdom, without Northern Ireland, was about to embark over the course of the next 5 or 10 years on a whole series of new trade agreements with America, India, Australia, Canada, and goodness knows where else, surely in that situation, Northern Ireland would find herself left behind.
No, what I would have is I would have a base in Manchester and a base in Belfast.
Fair enough.
And I could play both cards.
Yep. Yeah. And actually, isn't that what international businesses do anyway? They domicile themselves all over the place. They do it for regulatory reasons. They do it for tax reasons too. Jim, thank you. Interesting point of view. Jim says it could be a benefit for Ireland staying in it in terms of investment. And he makes the point. You could have companies set up all over the place. Interesting. I'm not sure that's the view that Arlene Foster takes, though. Hugh is calling from Maidenhead. Hugh, what do you think about this today?
Oh, hello, sir. Thank you for taking my call. I believe that Theresa May is doing her utmost best to get a deal for the United Kingdom.
Yep.
However, in my opinion, since 1929, partition between the North and the Irish Republic, Northern Ireland have been a pain in the butt for the United Kingdom.
Right.
And I believe I think there was a majority vote in favour of remaining within the European Union as far as Northern Ireland were concerned.
There was.
Yeah?
There was.
Therefore, if they've got to make a choice. They want to be part of the United Kingdom, go along with what the United Kingdom wants to do. If they want to be part of the European Union, then it's about time they negotiated with the Irish Republic to become part of that republic. That would get them what they want. In other words, they stay within the European Union and would leave the problem of this wretched border solved.
So you effectively, Hugh, think that Northern Ireland should disappear as it is, and there should be a united state of Ireland. Is that really what you think should happen?
That is exactly what I think should happen.
And do you think that's the view of most people living in England?
I don't know. I don't know most of the people living in England, but it's certainly my view, and I can only speak for myself.
Hugh, I had somebody on yesterday, and she was making a very similar point. I think there are people in England who are pretty bored with Northern Ireland, think it's cost us a lot of money, a lot of lives, been a lot of aggro, and I do understand that point of view, but it is part of the United Kingdom, Hugh, and that is not going to change. And what Mrs May...
Change. We could expel them from and we'd have to pass the necessary legislation. You've gone.
This is pretty hard-line stuff, Hugh, isn't it? Just boot them out, yeah?
See why you're hardline. You're a hardline Brexit supporter, and I respect you for that. I don't happen to agree that Brexit's a good idea, but that's my my opinion.
Yep.
However, it seems to me quite simple. Northern Ireland wants to stay in the Union, the European Union, so the Irish Republic's already a member of that union. Okay, Northern Ireland, do some deals with the Irish Republic, become part of that overall country, and get out of our hair.
Hugh,
Am I sounding too passionate?
No. I mean, look, passion's great, and that's what LBC's for, and we want all points of view. And, Hugh, you are not on your own. There are people out there who feel like this. I know that. I understand that. I am not one of them. But I think this, Hugh, I believe that in a referendum, Northern Ireland would put its membership of the UK Union above its membership of the European Union, and in fact Scotland is in exactly the same position too. If there was a referendum in Northern Ireland on whether they should join the South or stay with the UK, they would, in the current circumstances, stay with the UK. One of the reasons being, of course, if they joined the South, they'd have to take the wretched euro. But no, Hugh, a very passionate point of view. We're back to Belfast, to William. William, hello.
Good evening, Nigel. Nigel, where's David Davies in this would let her do that, and where's Boris? How could they let her turn round and sign a deal which would be scuppered with the DUP, or do they want her to turn round and walk a plank in this? There's something profound behind this. And Ian Paisley was on and was reluctant to go even as half as far as what you were saying. David Davies has always maintained that the border was a workaround, a simple thing, and everything else. Now, how can they let her sign up to that?
I wonder, William, not just on this, but on many other aspects of the Brexit process, what has happened to the cabinet Brexiteers? Why are they giving in on issue after issue? And yes, it's the Davises, and it's of course, the Borises and the Goves. When I talk, William, when I talk to people I know in the Conservative Party on the Brexit side, no names, no pack drill, they all say the same thing. Look, it may not be perfect under Theresa May, but if we were to speak out and split the government and bring it down, there'd be a general election. And then that Mr. Corbyn would get elected, and he, of course, wouldn't just do his best, of course, to get rid of Northern Ireland, because he's always believed that, bring in probably some extraordinary super taxes, but also he's now a hostage to the Blairite Parliamentary Party. He'd do his best, effectively, to stop Brexit. William, that is the answer I'm given, that they say time and again to me, we must put party loyalty first. That's your answer.
Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you very much indeed, William. And that's it. And I saw this back at the time of the Maastricht Treaty, all those years ago. I said to people, why are you not rebelling against this? Oh, well, you know, got to support the party, old boy, because if not, you know, we'll bring on a general election, Labour will win, and somehow it's always about the party in British politics, and particularly under a first-past-the-post electoral system. If Northern Ireland's MPs want to remove support, do they intend giving us our bung back, says Mike in Elsom? Well, that, of course, was the billion that Arlene Foster got for the deal to support and prop up Theresa May's government. I just want to say, as a final thought, I think it's been a pretty miserable day. A very, very grubby deal was about to be done in Brussels. I think she assumed that the DUP would go along with it, but they didn't. Arlene Foster stood up and said no. We've seen it in the past. Ulster says no, and boy, she meant it. And it's a very, very good thing, in my view.